As we hope for this ceasefire deal and for the release of hostages, we continue to mourn all of those who've been killed since the vicious terrorist attack by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023. And in that respect, my mind's very much with the 6 little babies who didn't see this proposal because they froze to death in Gaza just a few short weeks ago. And that collective punishment of the Palestinian people will not be forgotten by history, just as all of those who sat silent, who encouraged and who armed extremists in the Israeli government will be judged by history too. But this ceasefire deal is not yet certain. It's been widely reported this morning that the Israeli cabinet has not yet signed it off. So can the Secretary of State please elaborate? What would the consequences be for any reneging on this deal, either by Hamas or indeed by the Israeli government?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that this party has always stressed the seriousness, of course, of the security and Israel's security in this most toughest of neighbourhood with Iran and its proxies up to so much malign intent. But we have always insisted that it must be within international humanitarian law, and we have raised our concerns at every turn when we felt that that was being breached.
I think we all recognise that the ceasefire, while it may bring an end to the current extremes of violence, is not an end to the conflict. For lasting peace, there are a number of conditions that need to be met. So can I ask the Foreign Secretary, will he set out a timetable for UK recognition of the state of Palestine? And will he set out the concrete steps he will take to end the occupation and to ensure that all those who've committed war crimes are held fully accountable?
Well, can I say to the Honourable Lady, I can't set out a timetable because the UK government alone cannot possibly be responsible for a timetable that necessarily will involve the Israeli government, the Palestinian Authority, our friends in the United States and Arab partners particularly. So it's not going to be possible for me to set out a timetable on these issues. But I would ask her to have faith. That's why I sat down with President Abbas this week to discuss these very same issues. And on the question that she rightly raises of accountability, that must be a necessary matter for our international courts. And I've said from this dispatch box why we hold dear in this party the importance of international humanitarian law.
Obviously, we hope that the Israeli cabinet makes a rapid decision to support this ceasefire agreement. But a ceasefire agreement is only a ceasefire, and one hopes it's going to be rapidly followed by the release of all of the hostages and of the prisoners as been agreed. However, there have been some major developments over the past 2 years, particularly on the legal front, where the International Court of Justice has recognised acts of a genocidal nature have taken place and also called for Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank and an end to the settlement policy. Will the Foreign Secretary commit the British government to demanding that all of the ICJ recommendations are carried out and that Israel does have a programme of withdrawal from the West Bank and an end to the settlement policy? There cannot be any peace for the Palestinian people whilst they remain under occupation. They've suffered so much, they've lost so much, they've lost so many, and the mental scars of the people of Gaza are now going to be intergenerational. They're going to need a lot of support to get through this, and above all, international recognition of the state of Palestine.
Well, let me begin by recognising the unique way in which the Honourable Gentleman has raised these issues in this House over a lifetime of work, and his commitment to justice and accountability in this particular era. It is right and proper that international humanitarian law is followed, and it is right and proper that the international courts do their work. And let me also be clear that this government does not believe in illegal occupation, that this government is committed to two states. And let me repeat again, we cannot tolerate the violence. We cannot tolerate the expansion. We recommit ourselves to continuing to work with civil society on the ground in the West Bank and the occupied territory who are documenting these things. And actually both governments have continued to support those organisations over many, many years. And clearly when we get to that settlement, it will essentially come down to swaps and very serious negotiation in terms of that land on both sides. We recognise that, and that's why expansion is so thoroughly unacceptable.
Can I bring him back to the issue about the recognition of the state of Palestine? Because I agree with him, we've got to maintain the momentum of hope for all concerned. Although he can't give us a timeline today, could he set out the criteria that the government will use to judge that the time is right for the recognition of the state of Palestine?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, my right honourable friend will know that in some ways this is a moment of peril when we talk about that political process. On the one hand, we have the potential for Saudi normalisation and two states for the Palestinian people. On the other hand, we have those, some in Israel, who will never be committed to two states and talk instead of annexation. These two are opposite things. And that's why the next few months are so important, and it would be folly for me to stand at this dispatch box and give timetables.
The celebrations in Gaza which welcomed the ceasefire were matched only by the relief of the hostages' families that their loved ones were finally coming home. In the hours that followed, however, scores of Palestinian civilians were killed, and the Israeli government declared that it will not meet today to ratify this deal in what is an unspeakably cruel blow to those seeking peace and the return of the hostages. Both my right honourable friend from Aberdeen South and the member for Birmingham Perry Barr have asked, but in the absence of a reply, I'll ask again. If Israel does not agree this deal and continues to prosecute this conflict as it has to date, what will the consequences be for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government?
I say to the honourable gentleman that this is a moment, having met those hostage families, having prayed for the life particularly of Emily Damari, having met Palestinians with family in Gaza, where I insist from this dispatch box that I'm going to hold out for hope. I'm going to hold out for that deal being implemented on Sunday. I've been really clear about the responsibilities I believe that the Israeli government need to meet. We are meeting here in this House on a Thursday. There are days before Sunday. I believe a settlement will be reached. I will continue to work, and we will continue to work with the current administration in America and indeed President-elect's administration. He has made his views clear. I will not give in to the cynicism that we will not get to that deal on Sunday and this process will not begin.
Israel denied that it was holding Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital, only to confirm that it had in fact detained him. There are reports that he is currently being tortured in prison. The Foreign Secretary mentioned earlier today in his statement that the history of this conflict is littered with missed opportunities. Can he take the opportunity today to clearly condemn the conduct of Israel's indefinite mass incommunicado detention of Palestinians en masse without charge or trial, and what action is the government taking in light of the ceasefire offer on the table on its close allies' pattern of deadly attacks on healthcare, which are clearly part of an intention to destroy and degrade Palestinians as a group?
Well, can I say to the Honourable Lady that we have raised these issues with the Israeli government and through the Christmas period, and at this time, we recognise that there is pain, we recognise there is concerns about international humanitarian law, but all of us have a responsibility in this House to do all we can to bridge the divides if we are to ensure that this deal holds and the people of Gaza get the respite that I know that she has been campaigning for many, many months indeed.
Ellie Chowns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.